Hello everybody and welcome back to the United Stand. It is Monday morning, the day after the night before, and I want to get straight into it. I've woke up still fuming at where Manchester United is as a football club. It feels like we're at the lowest of the low. We are at rock bottom and the only way from here is up. It doesn't feel like it can get any worse. I've had people saying Erik needs to go. I've had people saying this is all in the ownership. I've had people saying it's the players. We need to get rid of the players. Apparently it's because Bruno's captain. That's why now we're losing and everything's going wrong. There's so many different angles that people are trying to cover. I watched the Gary Neville podcast this morning talking about the ownership. I thought he absolutely nailed it. I'm going to be talking about that there. Similarly, at the same time, you can't just blame the ownership for the decisions that are being made in the game, the lineups that are being put out, the signings that we choose to go and make. They are on the manager as well. We're going to be discussing all angles. If you saw Sky Sports last night too, Gary Neville, Carragher going at each other. Carragher saying, well, Erik ten Hag's been here for 18 months and what is he doing? And Neville saying nothing will ever change until the ownership changes. And to be honest with you, people saying who's right in this argument, both of them are right. Both of them are right in different ways. And I want to get your say. I put out a tweet this morning saying, what are the top 3 problems at Manchester United? What are your top 3 problems as to why Manchester United are not doing well as a football club? Off the field and on the field, and I've got so many different answers. I want to get through near enough each and every single department that people are talking about and where the issues do lie at this club, because off the field it's a disaster, on the field it's a disaster, and there is a toxicity that runs through that club from top to bottom, and it's so disappointing as fans that just want the club to be great again. And losing it in that fashion to our rivals, I don't care how good they are, they're the best team in the world. But it still just sucks the life out of you, and it makes you think, where did everything go wrong and how have we got to this point, especially since we thought that was going to be a new chapter with Erik ten Hag. But good morning, everybody. I mean, first and foremost, you can see the title, Erik ten Hag's job in danger, ? What are your thoughts on Erik ten Hag right now? I want to hear what you guys have to say in the chat, because I'm going to tell you what I think. And I know there's going to be people that agree with me. I know there's going to be people that disagree with me. On the forum last night, I think Faz and Ricky are leaning towards the fact that we need a new manager. Me, myself, I'm still not at that point. But I think people need to understand that you can criticise the manager of Manchester United. You can criticise a manager and at the same time not want them to be sacked. I can disagree what somebody does, but not want them to be sacked. And that is where I'm at right now. I'm at the point where there are major red flags with Erik ten Hag. Major red flags. A red flag to me is the lineups he consistently chooses to go with underperforming players that have a terrible attitude on the pitch. The red flags to me are the favouritism that I see from Erik ten Hag shining through. And I mean, it epitomised it with Rashford yesterday. And I think so many fans just absolutely were infuriated with the favouritism that we've seen building up. But in that game especially, just kind of came to its head there. I think his in-game management has been poor a lot of the time. I think sometimes he makes the wrong substitutions, and the way he explains them substitutions are red flags in my head. But at the same time, I look at rebuilds and I think Arsenal fans literally had Arteta out t-shirts printed. They were terrible. They came 8th twice in a row. They were terrible. But they stuck with him, and look at where they're at now. I'm so sick of this cycle where we get a new manager in, they do well for a season, or they get a little bit of hype, they put a few good games together and they do well, and then things start to go wrong and they get scapegoated and you say, oh, it's on the manager, he needs to go. And then a new manager comes in, you sign his players, you spend a load of money, because we spend the money in the transfer window, spend a load of money, overpay for players, by the way. That's why our bill is as high as it is, not because we've bought a lot of good quality. We have bought some quality players that they have been United-ified, and now they're terrible and they just get blamed. There's so much to talk about, but we also massively overpay for players, which is why it looks. Manchester United has spent the same as City. Manchester United has spent all of this money. We've spent a lot of money, but if you look at what we've got for the bang for our buck, we have been massively ripped off over the years. So you get a new manager in, you spend money on their signings. The following year, they don't really get backed as much and things start to go wrong. Players start to drop their heads because that's all they used to. When you're in an environment where that is the go-to behaviour, drop your heads, throw manager under the bus, bad body language on the pitch. We've seen these players do it numerous times in different managers. That's what you revert back to. And we have this same cycle where a lot of you guys in the chat will be like, why don't we go and get De Zerbi in, Unai Emery, Zidane, Diogo Simeone. I've seen so many people say this. Nothing will change. There's no way that 7th manager time round that they walk through the door and everything's like, you know what, they've absolutely changed Manchester United. We're going to go and win everything. It's not going to happen. I've come to terms with it while these owners are here. And you can point out the negatives with Erik ten Hag. Of course you can. You can point out all the negatives because there are some red flags. But I was so excited when Erik ten Hag walked through that door. He is an established coach. He has done well in Europe. He has done well in his first season with the worst point scoring Manchester United side in history. And this season's been terrible. But rebuilds have up and downs. And I think sacking him now, I don't have the energy. I don't have the energy for another manager to come in and do the same cycle all over again. I would so much rather ride out the storm and put faith in a manager and wait for the rebuild to be complete. That's what I want to do. I need to see some changes on the pitch, and I can still criticise his decisions. That's my opinion. You can have yours in the comments down below, but for me, personally, I would give Erik ten Hag another year. I think this season's basically already written off, which is sad to say. I mean, it's not. We can still turn things around. We're still in the Champions League. You know, we're still in the Carabao Cup. We're still in the FA Cup. It's not. It feels like it right now because of where we're at. I mean, 5 losses in our first 10 Premier League games is ridiculous. It really is, and it just feels like we're just suffocating. Like there's no way out. But I think Erik ten Hag has to go through it. I think he has to be given the time. I think he has to be given till the end of the season, no matter what happens, unless something absolutely drastic happens. I think he needs another summer transfer window. I think he needs faith. And sacking him now for me and doing the same cycle all over again, it's just deja vu. And I personally don't want to do it as a Man United fan. I think we need to be patient because, you know, I'm not comparing Erik ten Hag to Sir Alex Ferguson at all here. Well, I am a little bit, but his managers are completely different. But the fact is, Sir Alex Ferguson needed 4 years before he won anything. He needed 4 years. People are saying Sir Alex Ferguson out. You've all seen the papers. Sir Alex Ferguson needs to go. Like, managers don't automatically come in overnight and change things around, especially managers that are working with their hands tied behind the back with an ownership that has sucked the life out of this football club for years upon years upon years. I mean, everything he's had to deal with, the sale of the club, still nobody knows what's going on. Do you know how horrible that is to be working in an organisation? You don't know what's going on above you. You don't know if your job's safe. You don't know where you're going. You don't know which way you're going with that. It's horrible. He had to deal with the Greenwood situation. He's had the Sancho situation. He's had so much thrown at him, and I'm not making excuses. He still decides, you know, to go out week in, week out and play Bruno on the right where we know he's not comfortable. He still decides to not sub Rashford off even though he's playing poorly. He still decides to go with the same players that have been letting him down. I'm not excusing him for that. But I think we do need to look at the bigger picture here and just directing all of the blame at Erik ten Hag and being like, you know what, he needs to go. Man United are terrible. Nothing will change. Nothing will change until the ownership changes. I truly, truly believe that. C4 Moran says, personally, I'll give Erik ten Hag more time. Rome wasn't built in a day. Sam Brock says, injuries and loaned age replacements which aren't fitting of a top club are killing the season. Lack of ambition at the very top has ruined him. And I know a lot of people are putting in the chat, where's his style of play? Where's his signings are on the bench? I'm going to talk about that. I am going to talk about that. And people say, you know, De Zerbi's come in and setting a brilliant style of playing at Brighton. Emery's done the same thing at Aston Villa. Look at Ange. I keep hearing Ange Postecoglou. And Ange Postecoglou has done a very, very good job. But let me just explain the situation. Ange is dealing with a team that plays 1 game a week. 1 game a week, Tottenham play. Do you know how beneficial it is for coaches when they have all week to train their players? Since Erik ten Hag walked through that door, we've played the most amount of games in Europe. We've been in every competition until the end. We got to the FA Cup final, we got to the Carabao Cup final and actually won that. Win the Europa League until I think it was the quarters, I think it was last year. We played game after game after game. Erik ten Hag got no time on the training ground whatsoever. Of course he had pre-season and I can understand that. But even Man United's pre-season is an absolute farce where it's all about the money, it's about the revenue, they're playing games within 24 hours of each other in different states. It's ridiculous. So you don't get the full amount of time. I don't think we saw first team players come in until the very last couple of games in the pre-season. And even going into the season, you could tell how far behind we were and how unfit we were. So Erik ten Hag's dealing with the fact he's barely getting much time in the training ground because we're in every single competition. We're playing game after game, 3 games a week at times. Ange Postecoglou's come in. He's had 1 game a week. They went out of the Carabao Cup very early. They're not in Europe. that is very beneficial to a manager, very beneficial. Also, and I don't want to make this excuse, but it's true, the pressure at Aston Villa, at Brighton, even at Spurs, I know Spurs are quite a big club, but even at Spurs compared to Manchester United is levels, absolute levels different to what it is at Manchester United. And on top of that, where's De Zerbi's trophy with Brighton, where's Unai Emery's trophy with Aston Villa, and where's Ange's Postecoglou's trophy with Spurs? All three managers, I think, are excellent managers. I think what Ange's doing is brilliant. I think De Zerbi, what he's done with that Brighton team is insane. And I think Unai Emery is doing very well with Aston Villa. But where are the trophies? Where are they? They're not. I know it's different, obviously, the amount of tools you've got in Manchester United and the money that you've got and everything else. But people are bigging up these managers, and yeah, they're great, but have they got to a Champions League semi-final? I know Unai Emery's done very well in Europe, but have they? Like, people just want to see the next shiny toy that comes along. They say, you know what, I want that one. We get it in, they'll have a good year, and then it'll go sour again because of the ownership and people say, no, get him out, and then they'll move on to the next shiny toy that's doing well somewhere. I heard someone say, get Graham Potter in. I thought to myself, what is going on? Graham Potter didn't have the personality to manage Chelsea, never mind Manchester United. Did a very good job at Brighton, but he's nowhere near a big club manager. And you might have your opinions on Erik ten Hag, but the fact of the matter is, he did very well last year, got us Champions League and won a trophy, and we got to the final of the FA Cup. Granted, we should have done better in that game, but City are literally the best team in the world. He's had struggles with injuries. The Glazers are terrible. I mean, the club's going to get sold, and then it's called, no, it's only going to be 25%. I think we need to look at the bigger picture. We can still analyse Erik ten Hag, and he's not doing a good enough job, 100%. I'm going to get into the issues that are on the pitch in a second. But I think people need to gather a little bit of perspective. Lee says, hi Beth, great show. Ten Hag should not leave, but you're in everyone else's eyes, don't lie. We can see how rubbish some supposedly top stats are. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. Ronnie Dodge says, people don't want Sir Jim, but OGC Nice are first. And yeah, they are, okay. But I don't want to move into the Sir Jim territory. I mean, we can move into it if you want. I want to talk about issues at Manchester United right now. But with Sir Jim, I will wait to see what he does before I comment. But my coming into this Sir Jim era at Manchester United, if it does happen, these are the problems I have. 25%, how much realistically power you're going to have, and how much are you actually realistically going to be able to change with the Glazers still at this football club. Also, Nice are doing well this season, but since he came in, they had a record of being like 5th, 9th, and a lot of the Nice fans said he overpromised and underdelivered. Great businessman. I really hope if he comes in, he does manage to change Manchester United, but Nice being first is only a very, very recent thing, and I just don't know how much you'd be able to do with 25%, if I'm going to be honest with you. But that's a completely different show that we could talk about for such a long time, and I just want to kind of talk about Erik ten Hag now and the issues that are on the pitch. JS Manelko says, sacking Erik ten Hag is not going to fix anything. I'm convinced that there are other factors influencing Erik ten Hag's decision making. Someone in that club is pulling all the strings, and it's not Erik ten Hag. Don Woodham's super chat in. Nick P says, we're playing our second string defence. I don't understand what people expect. We held our own yesterday for half of a game, but that's our level now. Can I just say as well, like, what's absolutely crazy is we're playing Leicester City's defence. And I thought Evans and Maguire did pretty well yesterday, to be honest. I don't think they were massively the issues that are on the pitch. I think as a partnership they did well. But we're playing Leicester City's defence of years ago. When were they the defence at Leicester City? Must have been years ago. For a club that spent, what, 1.7 billion? And are meant to be one of the best clubs in the world. And that's what we've put out of the Manchester derby. Like, I know that there's issues and injury issues, but it's incredible, really. See if there's any more super chats coming in. Red since 1975, not saying that Erik ten Hag isn't making mistakes, but I've said it before. The four previous managers, players who have no football IQ, overhyped players and terrible owners and board. And Sam Bronx says, we are running on the bare minimum and the owner's ambition is to only milk as much as possible. Ambition should be to win, not maximise dividends. Glazers out. I mean, this is another thing as well. And while we're on the Glazers, I just want to say it quickly before we talk about Erik ten Hag and what's happening on the pitch and the players. But Manchester United are one of the biggest football clubs in the world. I feel like Man United and Real Madrid are the biggest football clubs in the world. You look at Manchester United, the stadium, as much as I love Old Trafford, and I think it's a place where memories have been made, and when you walk out, every time I walk out, you still get chills, and it's something that's amazing to witness. When you look at Old Trafford compared to the rest of the stadiums in the world, doesn't even make top 10 in the UK. Never mind in the world. We're meant to be the biggest club. If you look at Carrington, it's decent. It's nowhere near on the level of Manchester City, of other, top training facilities in the UK, never mind even the world. You look at, I know people that work in, sports departments, I know physiotherapists that, my friend is a physio and she's, in the industry, and people talk in Manchester. And nobody wants to go and work at Manchester United. Nobody wants to, because they're so behind with the equipment that they have and the capabilities that they have at Carrington. And they said, honestly, she said, she's not really into football, but I'm not surprised that United suffer with so many injuries after what I've heard about the medical department there. I mean, we're not best in class in any department. Players, coaching staff, training ground, Old Trafford, our stadium, facilities, anything. We're not best in class in anything. And then we expect to be winning on the pitch. It all translates and it all comes from the top. And if you set your standards so low at the top, then everything else follows and the standards drop throughout the whole organisation. Alex says, I don't even know who to blame anymore. Owners, as bad as they are, they don't run the pitch. Managers, we've had too many. Players, sell them all. And Shane says, I'm starting to lose my trust for Erik ten Hag. Some of the things he did and said yesterday shocked me. That's all I can see so far. Anyway, I want to talk about players on the pitch. So I asked you guys what was the biggest problems at Manchester United, off the pitch, on the pitch, and I wanted to see some of your guys' feedbacks and get them in the chat as well, what you think. But a few things that came up. So let me just have a look through. Okay, big one that came up with was Erik ten Hag's favouritism and stubbornness. And this is something that I have started to get really, really sick of. I think there's two players that massively come into this bracket, and obviously the big ones that I talked about within the fan base are Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. Two big players that have done very well for Manchester United in the past, that a lot of the fans want to be dropped and a lot of fans' patience are running very, very thin with. I don't like the fact that they get grouped together, because I think the two different players, they get treated in a similar way in the sense that it feels like they can never be subbed off. I think that's probably the one similarity between them, and a lot of the times, maybe sometimes they can lose the ball a lot. There are two similarities between two players, but I think they're different in different ways. Let's start off with Bruno. So Keane says Bruno shouldn't be captain. He's the opposite of wanting a captain. When Maguire was captain, we all blame Maguire for being captain. I didn't think Maguire was a good enough captain. Now Bruno's captain. Everyone's blaming Bruno for being the captain. It's going to happen when you're captain of Manchester United. But I asked the question to you guys, if you don't think Bruno should be captain. I actually do think Bruno should be captain. I think Bruno Fernandes is Manchester United's best player. I think he's playing very, very poorly, and I don't think we're getting the best out of him whatsoever. And just because I think he's Man United's best player doesn't mean I think he can't be dropped. The way he's playing at the moment, I don't care if a single one of them players got dropped. I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. I think nobody is playing well. But you look at Bruno Fernandes, if he shouldn't be captain, who should be captain at Manchester United then? Who should be captain? Can you point out a leader in that team that should be captain? Because I can't see one. I really can't see one. People would say Varane. He's injured every other game. And Ten Hag himself picked Maguire and Evans over him yesterday for tactical reasons. What you think about that, we'll talk about that in a second. Anybody else on the pitch that you can see? Casemiro, a lot of people saying he's wrote off and he's not as good, as he once was, and people are complaining about him. Who else pops to your mind? Literally, I can't think of one. I think if you would think about maybe one player that could be captain other than Bruno, I've always liked Varane, but he's too injury prone. You would think Casemiro, but we've got told Casemiro can't really speak that good English. I don't know how well he's doing now. Bruno Fernandes can speak multiple languages, so he can communicate to everybody on the pitch. And even Casemiro himself hasn't played well this season. And, you know, we've been told that Kobe Mainoo's coming through to potentially be the successor, and they're looking to maybe get a successor in for Casemiro next year, whether that's right or not. But he's been terrible at the start of the season, like the majority of the team have. So when you say, oh, Bruno shouldn't be captain, that's quite easy to say. But at the same time, who on that pitch should be? I don't think anybody stands out of being a massive leader. And that's a big issue. A big issue that we have. I love Luke Shaw. I think Luke Shaw speaks brilliantly well in interviews. I think he holds players accountable, but he's been injured for months again. So these are questions that you've got to ask yourself, and I want to hear what you guys say in the chat. Sam Brock says Bruno's playing out of position. Leach's a good shout, but again, he's been injured for a lot of his Manchester United career. Egg say, at this point, I'm ready to sell all the players, bring in the academy players, and let's build them up for this Ten Hag ball. No more star boys, no more crybabies, and no more shite mentality. A lot of people saying Dalot. I think Dallow's got a great attitude. I think the ways he communicates with the fan base is brilliant, and he's clearly a very hard worker. Ronaldo doesn't single you out in an interview for being a player that can make it to the top without you having a great mentality. And, you know, we know he works hard. We know how good he is with the fan base. On the pitch as well, I think he shows the right attitude, always has the right body language. The issue I have with Dalot is he can't even hold down the right-back spot. I really like him, and I think he should be the right-back of Manchester United. But we've seen him lose his place to Wan-Bissaka, come in and out of the team. You need someone who's going to be a consistent member of that team. So I feel like that rules that one out. It's really hard to try and come up with a captain that most people can agree on for that Manchester United side, and that's so damning of the lack of leadership that is at Manchester United. Lee says, who should be captain? Bruno is fine. I believe he's not immune to being subbed. It'll be good for his ego to be dropped, but will hopefully get his act together. Dav H says, 25, Scholes, Carrick, Fletcher, Ince, Hargreaves, all better than Bruno. So if he's our best player, we are so far away. I actually think Bruno is our best player. He's not been at the moment, and he's been terrible recently. Like, I can hold my hands up and say that. Like, he hasn't played well. But let's bring in some factors into this. A lot of the time he's being played out of position. Why on earth you would play your best player out of position, to me, is just mind-boggling. And this is something that Erik ten Hag takes full responsibility for. You can't blame the Glazers for this. Bruno Fernandes has been brilliant in the past. Like, his goal-scoring seasons and his contributions that he made to Manchester United since he first arrived at Manchester United Football Club, what he did since he walked through that door, and how he revolutionised us from the midfield was, I think all Man United fans fell in love with him, bar probably Ricky. Like, the goal contributions he was having, his creativity on the pitch, everything about him, he was a joy to watch, an absolute joy to watch. That's where he's had his most success for Manchester United, playing as a centre midfielder in the middle of the pitch. Why, when someone's had so much success being in that position, would you take him out of that position and play him on the right-hand side where he doesn't have the attributes to play as a right winger in the Premier League? He's not quick. He doesn't usually beat a man when he's on the ball. They're not his strengths. He's not necessarily extremely strong and physical. I mean, I think he's quite physical for a midfielder, but he can get shoved off the ball a few times. Bruno Fernandes works his best football when he's in the middle of the pitch and he has time to scan around him and look for the pass, the creativity that he can possess, the way that he can create chances. I mean, most chances created in the Premier League since he came into the Premier League. And yet, Ten Hag seems to have this obsession with shoehorning him in the right-hand side where his frailties get exposed. If Bruno Fernandes is playing on the right, for one, the opposition team's fullback's going to think, brilliant, I don't have to worry today, I can just get forward, because there's no way Bruno Fernandes is going to knock the ball past me and do me for pace and, you know, dribble his way past me. Like, they think, brilliant, one-on-one versus Bruno, I can get forward all day long. So it makes it a tougher ordeal for whoever the right-back is, in this case Dalot, and it makes it a lot better for their winger because they have someone to constantly double up with, and we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen. Gvardiol yesterday, Bernardo Silva and Grealish were having a field day down that left-hand side, a field day. And if you had someone there that could maybe do Gvardiol for pace or give him a little bit 1v1, I mean, this City team's ridiculous, but so maybe it wouldn't have affected them that much. But in any other sort of game, it massively can affect you. And you think, oh, either constantly watching over the shoulder, I have to watch because, you know, if he gets in behind me, I'm in trouble. So it benefits the opposition team, but also you lose what Bruno Fernandes, his energy, his dynamism, his creativity that he's brought in the middle of the pitch for Manchester United. Players don't suddenly just turn into bad players. Bruno was brilliant when he first came at Manchester United, and no one can tell me otherwise. He's gone very poor this season and he's not played well. But it's like these players get dragged down by Manchester United. They get Unitified, and it's sad to watch. And I'm seeing it happen to Bruno, who I didn't think it could happen to. And so with Bruno Fernandes, yes, he needs to be more disciplined. Yes, he needs to not lose his temper as much on the pitch and give away silly fouls and get silly yellow cards. And of course, you would like to see him give away the ball a little bit less, but every player has weaknesses, every player has frailties. But with Bruno, you can get so much out of him if you play him in the right system. And for me personally, Erik ten Hag's handling him completely the wrong way. And honestly, if you want to play a different midfield, if you want to play Amrabat, Eriksen and McTominay, I personally wouldn't. I would still put Bruno in midfield because I think as a centre midfielder, he's excellent. But if Ten Hag wants to do that, I can understand it. If you want to have more discipline, if you want to get more control of the game, I can understand it. But don't put Bruno out onto the right where he's not very good and the other team has a field day. Put Bruno to the bench. Like, that can happen. Bruno Fernandes, I think, is the best player at Man United, I'm going to be honest. And a lot of people agree with me. But if Ten Hag wants to play a more controlled midfield and he doesn't have room to fit Bruno in for the way he wants to play, put him to the bench. No player's above being benched. I'm going to sit here saying Erik ten Hag out because he's benched Bruno because he wants a more disciplined midfield. Don't force him out onto the right-hand side and create an imbalance in our team. It's frustrating. And that's where Erik ten Hag does have to come under criticism. We've seen his stubbornness. Ajax fans have told us about his stubbornness before. But that Bruno on the right thing, it's killing us in a lot of games. And it's killing us from two different angles. Let's have a look at some of your guys' super chats before I move on to Rashford. Sam Brock says, I was in the away end for Copenhagen. It was embarrassing how quiet the home fans were. How can the players show passion and fight when even the crowd is passive? United is ruined top to bottom. Sam, I go to Old Trafford every week, and yeah, the atmosphere isn't as good as what it has been because, I mean, I think you can see for obvious reasons, but the Stretford end was still singing when we're getting beat 3-0 to City. Don't question the loyalty of the United fans, especially the home fans in that ground, because we have been loyal, very loyal to this team. We have sat through dreadful football week after week and still cheered the players on. We honestly have. So have your opinion, and yeah, it's not as loud as maybe it once was, and I don't know what you expect when we're getting beat 3-0 to City, but that crowd was up for it yesterday. They were behind the team, and the team ultimately let the crowd down, in my opinion. Michael Marquez says, Kevin De Bruyne said Bruno Fernandes is the best cam in the Premier League bar himself. Yeah, I've seen that as well. I want to move on to Rashford. Now. Gaurav Kandel says, bad stats, Bruno playing in the right wing and have lost every game either for Man United or Portugal. We didn't lose against Burnley and he played on the right, but I think it's a very, very terrible record. Let's move on to Rashford. But get your comments in down below as well. And Mohamed El Mandhari, check Erik ten Hag quotes on Ajax play style, by the way. I'm going to bring that into the show. I've just had a tweet coming from Luckhurst. So Samuel Luckhurst from the MEN, it's just come out that Erik ten Hag retains the full backing of Manchester United power brokers, and Chief Executive Richard Arnold believes that the club is making good progress. Well, I'm happy to know that Erik ten Hag is still being backed, because I explained at the start of the show this process of getting rid of a manager and creating the same cycle again is not something that interests me. I can criticise Ten Hag. I'm going to continue to do so throughout the show, but I'm glad he still gets the full backing of Man United. I really am. The quote is making good progress. I don't agree with. I can't see the progress, going to be honest. I feel like we've gone backwards. At the moment, people say trust the process, and I'm trying to be patient. Please point out to me the progress. We've lost our first 5 Premier League home games. Sorry, not home games. We've lost our first 5 Premier League games. We're playing terrible football. Like, tell me the process. I don't think that we've made good progress, to be honest, so I disagree with that, but I'm happy that he's still got the backing. But we know these stories can flip so quickly. Sam Brock says, Beth, I go to the games. The crowd at United is rubbish apart from the few singing sections. I mean, I do think the crowd has gone quieter over the years, but I don't think you can blame the crowd. Out of all things, you can blame the crowd for how bad Man United are. You just can't do it. Kartik says, wait until Jan when Papa Sarr and Basuma are off for the AFCON and then Spurs will surely drop off big time. We need to have a decent January transfer window with a centre-back being a must. And Viking Crypto Warrior says, why did Erik ten Hag sign Mason Mount when Maddison was available? I asked you this question as well. People say, you know, why do we buy Mason Mount when we could have bought Maddison? It's an understandable question. Maddison is doing brilliantly for Spurs. No debate about that. Maddison's been excellent. But also at the same time, ask yourself this question. Would Maddison and Bruno be able to play in the same team? Do you think? Do you think it'd change anything? Would you bench Bruno for Maddison? Probably. At this moment in time, I mean, I think anybody with a brain would. I mean, even I would, and I love Bruno, but Maddison would get in over Bruno right now. But if we would have signed Maddison, would anything really be different? I just don't think. I don't think it would at all. You can talk about signings, and we're going to talk about signings in a second. We really are. But I want to talk about Rashford first. So, first of all, with Marcus Rashford, he's got 1 goal and 1 assist so far this season. He's played over 700 minutes, which is ridiculous in itself. Then again, Rashford's taken the 2nd most shots in the league and has only scored 1 goal. 1 goal after taking the 2nd most shots in the league. The return is terrible. And people can say, you know, we're not creating the chances for him. Erik ten Hag's even said that himself. We need to create more chances for him. He's had the 2nd most shots in the league, but he's only converted 1 goal. Rashford is playing terribly. He's playing terribly. For me, with Rashford, unless you're getting a goal or, you know, he has one of them moments, you're not getting anything over the course of 90 minutes. And I can accept Rashford for what he is. A moments player that's got ridiculous pace and is very good on the counter-attack. Well, has been. He's not been good recently. And I actually think his pace has slowed down a little bit from when he first came onto the scene. But persisting with Rashford, I think could be a factor in Erik ten Hag's downfall. I really do. And I'm not saying Rashford will never be shouldn't be in the starting lineup for Manchester United ever again. I'm not saying that. I think he's got good qualities. But if a player is playing poorly game after game, bench them, drop them. I talked about this on the forum yesterday. There's only so much you can persist with a player that isn't giving you anything back. Ten Hag can say in his press conferences, we need to keep faith in him, we need to trust him, we need to keep playing him. But he's got to give you something back. And I can deal with a player not being on good form. I can deal with that. I mean, Rashford's form is honestly off a cliff, and he's been playing terrible. He had that purple patch last season, but he's not had ever really consistently played well for over the course of... Is he ever played well for more than, 6 months at a time? I don't think so. I really don't. Over his course of his career, and he's 25 now. But with Rashford, you know, you can excuse poor performances, you can excuse bad form if you want to as a fan. I can't tell you what to do. What I cannot excuse, and this is what I can't excuse from Erik ten Hag either, I can't excuse terrible body language game after game. I can't excuse walking around the pitch when we're getting dominated by Manchester City. And you know, Rashford's talked about himself. You know, he's a Manchester United fan, born and bred. You know, been at the club for all of his life. Why aren't you covering every single blade of grass then? Why aren't you showing desire, fight on the pitch? You get so much respect from fans if you just showed a little bit of bite. Like, Grealish showed more bite than Rashford, and Grealish wanted to come to Man United ages ago and was slagging City off in his socials and had to delete all his tweets, and he showed more bite for Manchester City than Rashford showed for Man United. And it's not as if it's just a one-off game. Rashford has had this poor body language for weeks upon months now, and fans are becoming frustrated with it. Also, with Rashford, what is frustrating is you have a player like Højlund who's running his socks off all game, making anything out of the scraps he's been given, who looks like the guy that's come through the academy and is a Man United fan from the way that he's pressing, the way that he's trying, the way that he's, you know, doing everything to be physical against top centre-backs and get the ball down and lay it off. And whenever he gets an opportunity, he's trying his best. And then Erik ten Hag, in response to this, has subbed Højlund off before he subs Rashford off for a left winger. And you're playing Rashford down the middle, who is, without a doubt, a worse striker than both Martial and Højlund. It is pure favouritism, and the fans are not going to get behind that, and they're not going to back it. Rashford, I've loved him. He's from Wythenshawe, born to fight, born and bred. We all know the song. Like, we've all put so much faith into him, but you've got to call out for what it is. He's been terrible for weeks, and his attitude looks so poor. And the fact that's being rewarded by continual starts and not being subbed off, again, is another problem that I can criticise Erik ten Hag for, and is a big, big red flag. I thought to myself, is it because he's worried about losing the dressing room? Because obviously once you lose the dressing room, it's over for you. And Rashford's a senior figure, and he's already had that, you know, issue with Sancho, and he already, I think he annoyed a few players with the way maybe he dealt with the De Gea thing. So he's thinking, you know, I need to keep my more senior players on side, in likes of Rashford and Bruno. But still, I don't find it as an excuse. That's a big issue that I can't get my head around. I really can't. And, you know, you can overlook it in other games, and it's frustrated me all season, but to do it in a derby, it's ridiculous. It honestly is. Malcolm says, a lot of the time United's build-up is too slow. Why do players get to halfway line and stop, and there's still space in front of them? Shane P says, does Bruno play Mount for a few games in a row and see how much better we will be? Trust me. Simmer Jaya says, agreed with Ricky about Rashford's number spike last season. The club encourages overpaying mediocre players in transfers and wages. And this is what I mean, like, the fact of the matter is, Rashford's form has sunk since he got that contract. I don't know if it's a coincidence. He obviously did spike last season. I agree with Ricky on that point, if anyone watched the forum. But it's something that needs to be looked at. It really does. And the amount that we're paying these players is crazy, considering what they're giving us back on the pitch. Another thing that people have talked about is the fact that Erik ten Hag has his £90 million signing in Antony on the bench, and he's playing Bruno on the right instead of the right winger he insisted we buy. And I'm not saying Antony's like our saviour and he's good enough to start, because he's been terrible as well. But the fact that, you know, you persisted for this player and he's benched for a midfielder that's best position is in the middle of the park, I don't get it. 60 million on Mount, gave him the number 7, frozen out, brought on yesterday and was basically, you know, thrown to the wolves in a way that when he was brought on. Like, realistically, the way that he's set up, Mount couldn't get in the game. It wasn't a good game for him, but the way that we were playing, I think it would have been hard for any player to come in under that position and do anything. I think it was the wrong substitution. I really do. Mount's best positions for Chelsea have been mostly off the left. He could have easily took Rashford off. He was playing poorly. Chooses not to. Mount's really good at playing in the half spaces. Played on the right before for Chelsea and done well. Could play him there. No, when Mount comes on, you actually put him in the middle and keep Bruno on the right, who's having such a poor game out there. It doesn't make sense to me. Amrabat, who he persisted to get, subbed, and that sub cost us the game, in my opinion. I mean, we probably would have went on to lose anyway, but there was a massive shift when Amrabat was subbed off. And you keep on McTominay, who I actually thought was doing pretty well as the forward player in that position, and moving back to the position we've seen him be poor at for Man United for years. McTominay in that forward role with Højlund, I thought was doing pretty well. And then you're moving back to play centre defensive midfield, which we know he's been poor at for years in his career, over the player that you insisted we go and buy. Reguilon, the only left back we have fit, on the bench for Lindelof, who is not a fullback at all, and was outdone completely yesterday. And then, you know, it's just I don't get it. Like, I just don't get how they can be explained. I saw Gary Neville answered a question on Twitter saying, you know, people were saying Antony cost Man United 90 mil, no one can blame the Glazers for that. This is on Ten Hag, and United overpaid monstrously. And Neville replied saying, I get what you're saying, but if the kids ask for something on a continual basis and the parents keep writing the cheque, who do you blame? And it's true. We need a sporting director. Like, Ten Hag these are Ten Hag signings. Antony was his signing, Mount was his signing, you know, Amrabat's his signing. The signings that Erik ten Hag's made are his signings, and I'm not making excuses for that. He's pushed for these players. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, a club at a top level has a sporting director that works with the manager, and they'll say yes or no, yes or no. Any sporting director that's worth his salt, if Ten Hag was like, no, I really do want you to buy Antony for 90 mil, would have said, Erik, no. You're not buying Antony. Here's 3 other right-wing options that I think suit your style of play that we could go for. Do you know, at Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp didn't go and buy Salah. Their sporting department went and scouted out Salah and said, this is the player for you. A manager is a manager. He shouldn't be a manager and a sporting director at the same time. And Man United has suffered with this for years. Another really interesting quote that Erik ten Hag talks about: the players decide how you play. Ajax has a very typical characteristic style of play. With Manchester United, I will always show different football. I did last year as well. We play much more direct football here because I have the players for that here. For me, and I might be wrong, I read that as he's trying to put it in a way where I can play direct football here because I have the players to do that, as if it's a bonus. I read that as I don't have the players that can play possession-based football and can keep the ball like I did at Ajax. That's how I read that as. And again, that's another alarming thing considering how much money these players are paid and how much we've spent on them. Like, it really is alarming. And of course, you don't always have to play possession-based football where it's tick-a-tack or keeping the ball. There's different styles of football. I mean, Liverpool have been very successful over the year of having these spells in possession where they will be completely dominating you and just attack after attack after attack, and then they'll have a quiet spell of 20 minutes of keeping things calm, and then they'll go at you again. There's different styles of football that you can play, but for me, that was a big kind of alarm bell going off in my head, is you're saying you don't have the players to play the style of play that you want to play. And that's generally how I feel. And people can say, well, he's spent all this money and he's got these signings in. You look at the team yesterday, you've still got Evans, Maguire, and I'm not saying these were bad. Evans and Maguire, I think, actually did pretty well yesterday. Dalot, I like, but wasn't an Erik ten Hag signing. Lindelof wasn't an Erik ten Hag signing. You look, Bruno wasn't an Erik ten Hag signing, no matter how much I like him. Rashford wasn't. Like, there's still players on the pitch and in the squad that are not Erik ten Hag's signings and players. And I also think even the players he's brought in, maybe a big reason why a lot of them have been unsuccessful is because we don't have a sporting director that is scouting out these players and scouting out and saying to Erik ten Hag, no, this isn't the one that we should go and get. We should go with this. You know, it's not a one-man job. And we've suffered through not having a sporting director for so long. Abin Mishra says, the way we hand out contracts is actually the main reason these players don't need to sweat to earn, let alone being passionate for the club. Mahid said, I'm not Erik ten Hag out, but I'm starting to feel like Erik ten Hag doesn't know what United is all about. I still do back him to do well, given the time and giving the patience. Anything else that we can talk about here that I've got in the super chats? I think they're all the super chats that we have in for now. But the last thing I wanted to talk about here is just the other reasons that we're not playing well and problems that people were talking about that I've written down. I had two people that were in the chat that I wrote down what they said. So one big thing that came up was struggling to build out from the back. This I can bring in the quote that's going around on the internet, that's going around Twitter, of Erik ten Hag saying the reason why Varane didn't play yesterday was for tactical reasons, and a lot of people misinterpreted it to say that he said that Maguire is a better right centre-back than Varane. That's not what he meant. What he meant was, in this game, he couldn't have played Maguire on the left-hand side because Maguire, on the ball, in that area, could get pressed, and it's very dangerous to playing against Manchester City. He's not as good on the left-hand side. Maguire's been our best centre-back over recent weeks. I'm not a Maguire fan, but he has been. And you can't drop him. Like, he's just scored against Copenhagen. He's won everything that's come into the box. He's been good. So he's got to pick between Varane and Maguire to be the right-sided centre-back for this game. He showed trust in Maguire. He's played well. He went with Maguire. Varane doesn't play on the left. He's better on the right. So therefore, he had to pick someone that can play on the left, Johnny Evans. Martinez is out. Luke Shaw's out. Two players that he's trusted to play on the left side of defence multiple times. So that's what it was with Varane. Whether you like it or not, I think Varane should have been playing that game, I'm going to be honest. But Ten Hag opted to go that way with that. That's why that was happening. But building out from the back is massive. Something that we're struggling with, something why we're really struggling to transition through midfield into attack. Two big things here. I think losing Martinez is massive for this. Martinez wasn't great when he was playing at the start of this season, but he was still suffering with injury. Martinez is absolutely huge for Erik ten Hag's build-up play. He's been a massive loss. And another big loss that I don't think people are talking about enough is the loss of Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw, in that left-back role, progresses the ball up so well. I can't wait for him to come back. The way he can drive through midfield, the power he has behind him, the way that he can go into the midfield and also, you know, go up the wing as well. Luke Shaw's been inconsistent, and Luke Shaw's, had injuries over the years, but I think at the level he's at now, he's an absolutely huge loss to that team, and he's a huge loss in the build-up play. And do not get me wrong, City have lost De Bruyne and they still look very good. Like, teams lose players all the time. They've got to be able to adapt. We haven't been able to adapt. The fact of the matter is, Lindelof as a fullback isn't good enough, especially as a left-back. Johnny Evans, respect him a lot. He's done well when he's come in, but he's not the level that we need to be going forward, no matter what Ricky says. Like, you look at that back line that we've had all season, it's absolutely terrible. It's a back line that, if it was under any other team that wasn't labelled Manchester United, you wouldn't expect it to come top 10 in the league, genuinely. So Ten Hag has had to deal with injuries, and there is reasons why these things aren't working, but you can't make excuses when you've spent so much money, and this is the situation we're in. And again, I think it's showing now why Erik ten Hag wanted a centre-back so much in summer, and Romano is saying that Man United are looking to get a centre-back in January, but still, it's just too little too late in a way. And another one that somebody brought up was pressing high poorly and leaving the midfield open. Something, again, I can't understand. All season, I think our pressing's improved, but the gaps are leaving midfield. We just leave ourselves open. We fall into the trap too often. For me, it's not working. It needs to be addressed. Not having consistent patterns of play and ways to create chances. This is a big one for me. Another one that Erik ten Hag needs to be criticised for, because what is going on the training ground. When we get into the final third, we literally just look like hit and hope. We look like we have no idea. You look at other teams, you look at Arsenal, you look at Liverpool, you look at City, you look at top teams in the league, Spurs now even. Like, you can tell what they're trying to do. Like, when someone's got the ball in a certain area, you can tell where they look up to pass the ball to, because they know the patterns of play that they're trying to do. Like, at Spurs, Postecoglou puts his fullbacks basically into the midfield, playing high up across the pitch, helping out in the front line. You can tell what they're trying to do. City, I mean, the patterns of play that they have are just, they're so well drilled, and it's like second nature to them. Liverpool as well, the way that they can do it. Like Arsenal, the triangles that they play with the likes of the Saka and the Ben White and the Odegaard moving in, like, you can tell what they're trying to do. With Man United, and this is me not making excuses for Erik ten Hag, because I really, it baffles me. We look like we have no idea. Højlund's getting absolutely no service, and people used to criticise Martial. But realistically, playing as a number 9 for Man United is a graveyard shift. Our wingers are constantly looking to go inverted, and even when they do cross, like, you're asking Rashford to cross on his left foot, which is his weaker foot. I think Rashford's spending about 10 years on the ball before he decides what to do with it. Like, this looks like Erik ten Hag just said, go out there and do what you want. Like, the forward play is non-existent, and it massively, massively needs improvement. I think our forward line in the league, since the league has started, there's one goal in our forward line, one goal, and it was from Rashford. Like, that's all we've done since the start of the season. It's embarrassing, and it's a big problem. It's a big problem. We look so lacklustre, and just look like we have no clue what's going on in the final third. And then people talk about the players, none of them fight for the badge. We've seen players' attitudes, we've seen heads drop before. It's happened numerous times. I'm not excusing it, but it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're playing for a club like Manchester United, getting paid 200, 300 grand a week, and your heads drop and your body language goes. There's no excuse for it. Ten Hag's stubbornness, again, will come back to bite him. It will. He's got the backing of Man United now. He's got the backing of me. I really do want to give him time in this rebuild, but the stubbornness is driving people mad. And the signings, going to be honest, the signings overall haven't been successful. And again, I think that comes down to not having a sporting director at the club. And the hierarchy, ultimately, it comes down to the hierarchy of the club, and the Glazers at the top of the club have spent money on the wrong things, actually spent a lack of money, and have done nothing in their power to make this club best in class in any department, and left it to rot, and treated it like a business that they can get money out of rather than a football club that they want to be successful. And that's what it all comes down to, in my opinion. Luke says, Rashi is on the same or more than Salah, 350k a week. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Someone just says, weren't you wanting us to sign a new goalkeeper, Beth? Come on. Come on now. Is that really the comment you're going to throw at me? Onana was our best player yesterday. Honestly. And Sam Brock says, we don't have the quality on the ball at the back and the midfield to play out the way we did like City. I can see why Erik ten Hag wanted Frenkie de Jong. Yeah, not securing Frenkie de Jong was probably the biggest mistake we've ever made with Erik ten Hag. And of course, you can't force a player to come that doesn't want to come. But at the same time, you can understand so much now why Erik ten Hag was so desperate for him. He would have revolutionised us, honestly. And I know a lot of people have disagreed with me, and some people agree with me. I'm running a lot right now on anger and frustration because I absolutely love this club, and it's been my life, my whole life, you know, going to the games. And when my dad started taking me when I was little, you know, me, my dad and my brother, it's like we did every single weekend. And still, obviously I'm doing a lot on the shows right now, but still, like, it's our weekends together. We'll just absolutely love football, and Man United has been my whole life. And to see the club in the way it is, it's just, it's heartbreaking. It honestly is heartbreaking. And I know so many people sit here and say, well, it's the best team in the world, what did you really expect? And I was one of them people saying, we'll probably lose. Like, we probably will lose. We're just not really in the position where we can compete with Man City right now. And I can understand that. But it's the way we lost and the build-up of everything this season. Even the games we have won, the Sheffield United, the Brentford, the Copenhagen, we've played so poorly. And it's just sad to see. It really is. But I'm not happy with the style of play. I'm not happy with Erik ten Hag's stubbornness. I'm not happy with the way that he's used his signings. I'm not happy with the in-game management. I'm not happy with the favouritism. Yesterday was the first time I really did start questioning Erik ten Hag and getting major red flags, especially post-match when he was explaining himself a little bit as well. I thought, that doesn't really add up to me. But I can criticise and still want him to be given the time. I don't want to go through the cycle again. I don't have the energy for it. I want to stick with this manager. I want it to work. As soon as Ollie got sacked, I was the first person on this channel to say that I wanted Erik ten Hag. I know he has flaws as a manager, but as Luckhurst saying from the MEN this morning, the club are backing him. I want him to get backed. I want him to still be here when whatever new ownership comes in is in place, and I want to be able to see what he can do. You know, as fans sometimes, and this is where Man United have struggled, you have to be patient. You have to be patient. Some managers come in, it goes straight away. Some managers, it takes a while. At this club and the ownership that is at the top of this club, everything slows down. Everything takes longer. And for me personally, I want to stick with the process and see where it goes. But everyone can have their opinions, of course, and I can understand. By the way, just because I want Erik ten Hag to stay and I want to continue this rebuild and see where it goes, doesn't mean I don't understand where people are coming from. I mean, I just mentioned my dad, like who got me into football and got me into United. He's massively questioning ten Hag right now. He doesn't think he's up to the job. I respect his opinion. Ricky wants him out completely. I respect Ricky's opinion. I'm going to rewatch the game with him, no matter how painful it might be tomorrow, so he can give me, you know, he can show me like his vision and the way that he sees things. Like, I understand why people would want to change things because it is so poor on the pitch, but this is where we're at. Everyone's going to have different opinions, and my job is to come on here and tell you mine. That doesn't mean you have to think the same way I do, and I understand people that are sick of it and want a change. I get it, but that's where I'm at right now. Last super chat from Jono. Beth, the problem is we've got players that are so obsessed with scoring themselves rather than setting teammates up for the sake of the team. Completely agree with that. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Felt like therapy this morning. I had to get it off my chest. Do you know I woke up in the middle of the night yesterday? I woke up in the middle of the night thinking about that game. That's how much it's like taken over my life. Honestly, it's frustrating, but this is what it is, and it can only go up from here. I feel like we are at rock bottom. We've got Newcastle on Wednesday night. I really hope we see a different team. I really hope Erik ten Hag changes it. If he can't change the team after that, when can he change the team? And I hope that things can change. But my hope is starting to run thin. It really is. Last super chat from Karen. Hi Beth, ten Hag has been at fault for yesterday's defeat, but I still look at the bigger picture and focus on the right thing. Hashtag Glazers out. Karen, I'm with you on that one. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for everyone for getting involved in the community. Please make sure you like the video on the way out. We've got the call-in show coming up at 4 p.m. today. We've got Mark stuff coming with Ben Foster with you very, very shortly. Stay tuned, everyone. Don't let this Man United defeat ruin your week. Have a good one. It's Monday. Let's make this an unbelievable week for everybody. And yeah, have a good week, everyone, and I will see you soon.